We usually take off in the summer, but we have felt the need to come back and do a special episode of the podcast specifically because of the recent tragic events of the floods in Kerr County here in Texas that has impacted a lot of our families in our church and in our local community here in Houston, but also in West Houston. Because there are several camps there. One, Camp Mystic, people have heard about, where 20 some odd girls were there and their cabin washed away. It was the youngest cabin, the Bubbles cabin of girls who were third grade-ish. And so it's just been a really, really heavy, tragic, I think, the thing for everybody, not only, especially the families directly impacted by that, but the whole community, because everyone kind of knows each other in this pocket of Houston. And so we felt like it'd be very important this week to offer a couple of things that we hope can be helpful for families and for friends and for others who are just trying to make sense of all of this. Yeah. And so we decided to do this pop-up episode, and we're joined today with Dr. Michelle Forrester, who is a very well-known and respected child psychologist and works and has done this for a long time. Michelle, as we get started, just tell us a little bit about your background and your career, and then we'll dive in. I know, Matt, you've been talking to folks, as we all have, and collected some questions from a lot of people. Yeah. And so we're going to try to try this to just be a very helpful tool and resource this week, in addition to some other things that we're going to have out there through this church and some other churches working together. So, Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a pediatric psychologist. I've been here in Houston since 1995, so been doing this for 30 plus years. I'm located here on the west side, and my area of expertise is really in young children, so up to about age 12 or so. And that is kind of the bulk of my practice and the work that I've done over the past 30 years. I love my work, but there are times when these kind of things arise that we need to help children tap into their resilience and help them figure out how to manage in the times when some of us are unsure how to manage.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think that's that really cuts the core of kind of holding this unimaginable tragedy that I think that there's so many questions that kids are asking and that parents are asking. And we thought just one of the things that John and I have done is we've kind of sent out email or text to folks that we know that are really standing with parents and friends and families that have lost children, and just ask them, what questions could we ask you?
Sure.
And partly as a way of just kind of getting resources to people as quickly as possible, because we know that kind of early intervention to these kinds of questions and trauma is really important.
Yes.
And so, and I've just had a flood of questions come back in, probably 30, 35 questions. And I don't know if we'll be able to get through all of them. I've categorized them. So what I may do, if it's okay with y'all, is just kind of ask them in groups and then let you take a look at them through those lenses. Is that okay?
That sounds good.
Okay. The first category is really kind of understanding loss and safety. And people have asked, and these are mainly children's and parents' question, camp is often a place of refuge. What do you say to children who have lost that sense of refuge? Another question is, how can we help kids regain a feeling of security after sudden and violent tragedy? One of the kids asked, if it rained a lot again, is this going to happen to me too? I saw the water take away people's house. Will it take away mine? And then how do we help children differentiate between real risk and imagined fear?
Yeah. Excellent questions.
Yeah.
And I guess before I delve directly into those, I want to say to parents, when children ask them questions, to not be afraid to take some time rather than feeling like I have to answer this question right now.
Oh, that's great.
To say to kids, you know what, that's a great question, and I'm going to get back with you on that. And to give yourself time to come up with what you feel is going to be the most appropriate response, because sometimes in the moment, if you feel pressured to give an answer, it may not be the best one for your kiddo.
Yes.
And so giving yourself time to do some research, ask some questions, get some input, is an okay thing to do. To say to a child, that's a great question, and I am going to get back to you. And it is imperative that you do get back to them. But do give yourself that window to don't feel like you have to answer right this second.
That's good.
That being said, so yes, for kids whose sense of camp is a refuge, and yes, camp it's fun and it's friends and it's growth, and it means so much to so many people. And I think the thing to say is that right now, given what's happened, it may not feel that way, and in time, it will feel that way again. Because feelings, they change. Now, these feelings are big feelings, and there's a lot of trauma here. So it's not like they're going to, in my work, I often say to kids who are dealing with anxiety and other things, feelings change like the weather. And you feel this way right now, and later you won't feel that way. As we're looking at kind of how kids self-regulate, this is a little different twist because there's so much trauma attached to this. But I think it is important to let them know that you won't always feel this way. That time does help. Time does help you to go back to feeling good about the things like camp. Right now, you feel how you feel about it. And there are no feelings that are wrong, and that's okay. And I think in terms of how to help kids manage that, you really want to be in the moment. So because we go in our mind to the past, we go in our mind to the present, and to the future, and where we really need to help kids recenter is in the present.
Okay.
And so when kids are, if they're crying or hyperventilating or getting so worried and talking about their friends and how they miss them, and all of those things are all valid. And we can take a breath, and right now, feel your feet on the floor. You are in a safe space.
Okay.
Mommy is here. Daddy is here. Your brother and sister are here. Whoever.
Okay.
Your aunt, your uncle, your grandparents. We are here. You are safe. In this moment, right now, you are safe. And as I was driving over, the rain,
Yeah.
I have a lot of kids already who have issues with rain. We post Harvey and the derecho last year, and those weather-related events for some of our kids are already heightened. Since they have a heightened sense of anxiety around it. So we can't dismiss that unilaterally and say, you're fine, because their fear is real.
Yes.
And they've probably seen the power of water. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge to them, that yes, when we take kids to show them the Grand Canyon and we say, look, this was created, how water created this. And so we have to be realistic about that's a real thing. Water is extraordinarily powerful. Where we live, water is an issue. And so I think what we can do is help kids know, well, our family has a plan. And if you can give them that plan, if we were to see water in our house, here's what we would do. We would go upstairs. We would, call for help. We would, if it looks like it's going to really, really get bad, we would, get in our vehicle, get in our whatever. So give them some sense of a plan. Now, and I want to say a lot of these things, too, are going to be age and developmentally related. So for your, teens, tweens, you're going to give them a lot more information than you are your very young children.
Right.
So your very young kids, don't give them more information than they're asking for.
Because that will just create more anxiety in them?
Exactly.
Okay.
So
So that they know that there's a plan.
yep,
Is
we
really
have a plan.
important. Okay.
We have a plan. And I think that helps them feel like, okay, the grown-ups are in charge here, because kids know they're too little to be in charge. And when they feel like the grown-ups, have a plan, that's going to be helpful to them.
That's really good.
That's interesting you say about, answer their questions. Because I've always think like a young child will ask you a question and we answer it like we're talking to an adult.
Right.
Not only answering the question, but then giving all the rationale and all the explanation.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do that, is what I hear you saying. Like,
Right. Right. Well, and I think the other thing that throughout this process, as I said earlier, is don't feel pressured to answer on the spot. And the other thing is do more listening than talking.
Yes.
Because that's really what kids need. They need a space to figure this out. And your answers may be less important, I dare say, much less important than your presence. And it's creating a space for kids to do the work. Children know what they need. And if we get out of the way and give them the space to do it, they will do it.
I think adults, we worry so much about giving them the right answer, the correct answer.
That's right.
And what I hear you saying is it's more your affect or your presence and that
That's right.
connection with them.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And in this situation, there is no right answer.
yeah, of course.
There is no right answer.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned from you is that often kids express things through their body, through play, through their emotions. And I just wonder if a kid isn't able to articulate that there may be a lot of just emotional deregulation in small children.
Absolutely.
And so what happens if you're like in a family? Because I think also that if a parent is deregulated,
Yep.
and they're experiencing kids that often kind of the go-to is to punish or to create, what do you do? What would you say in those situations?
Yeah, it's very, very likely, especially with younger children, that you're going to see behavioral shifts.
Okay.
And that's normal. That is how kids express themselves, and you need to create space for that. And so when you start to see irritability, when you start to see kids with sleep issues, when you start to see kids throwing temper tantrums, when you see that they're volatile in their behaviors and their emotions, that should be a signal to slow down, step back, and create a space. And when I say create a space, I'm not talking about with a 7-year-old to sit down on the couch and say, tell me how you're feeling. I'm talking about create a safe space to say, do you want to pick a game that we could play? Do you want to play Uno, or do you want to play Candyland? You want to create this safe space with routine, things that kids are familiar, that are comfortable. And then in the context of that space, then you might throw out I'm wondering, you were really upset earlier. I'm wondering if it was really about the cup that you didn't get, or if it was really about thinking about your friend from the camp. And then they may or may not answer that. Kids are going to experience all kinds of emotions, and kids are going to process this differently.
Yeah.
You may have some kids who can articulate it and tell you exactly what they're thinking and feeling and put it all out there. And you may have others who literally cannot find a way to put words to it. And that's where play comes in. For your younger children, you really want to create safe spaces for play, because that is how children best communicate. It's not language, it's play. And if you give them the space and the time to do that, it's important that they play in the presence of, and that's where I keep coming back to, your presence is more important than your right answer, because there's not a right answer. But if you create a safe space for play and let children play whatever they play, you don't try to direct it, you don't try to change it, you don't try to correct it, you're just there. And let them do that as often as they need to. And they will work out what they need.
So being as a as a parent, I'm just thinking, instead of saying, go to your room and play, like do that together with them.
Exactly.
Whether that's Legos or drawing or whatever. Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I would stay away from digital media screens. I would really good. Children are very tactile, and sensory play. For some kids, that's going to be really important. So
now,
sand.
Is the play for you? Is there something that you're discerning in the midst of the play, or is that just space for them?
It's just space.
Just
As a
space.
parent,
so you're not trying to solve or fix or figure
No.
something out in the play. You're giving.
No, the kid will do that.
Yeah.
But the parent doesn't need to understand it or interpret it. It may be blatantly obvious, or it may not be. But it's the safe space in which to do that that's really important. And even with your older kids, given the time and the space, those kids will still play.
I want to ask a couple of difficult questions that parents have asked.
Sure.
How do you explain the sudden death of a child to small children while reassuring or trying to reassure them that they are safe?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. And I think what we have to say to kids is that sometimes terrible things happen. And sometimes children die. It's not fair. It's not their fault. They didn't do anything. Nobody else did anything. It just happened. It is highly unusual. It is not usually what happens. And so helping them understand that it can happen, but usually it doesn't. So children have gone to camp for 100 years. Thousands and thousands and thousands upon children have gone to camp for hundreds of years, and they've been safe.
And this camp has been going for 100 years.
Yes, it's been 100 years. That's right.
And
Right.
parents and grandparents have
That's right.
gone to this camp.
Right. And they've been safe, and they've had a wonderful time. And children will again go to camp and feel safe, and it will be fun. This is unusual. This doesn't usually happen.
Yes. Okay. So another question that's related to this is how do you tap into your child's heart without projecting your own onto them or another like it? Is what does it mean to hold space for a child's grief without overwhelming them with your own?
Well, I think that raises the important point of parents taking care of themselves and their grief and figuring out how to do that for themselves. And then to create the space for kids is just being with them. The play is great. If the kids want to talk, talk. If they don't want to talk, that's fine. The sooner you can get into, I know it's summertime, so a lot of routines are off anyway, but having a very set routine, especially for younger children, will be very soothing for them so that they know what to expect. So if you're off from school, you're off from camp, and you're just going to be at home, maybe putting a calendar up for what we're going to do today.
Like having a plan for
Just
the day.
having a plan for the day. That's
Okay.
right.
That's really interesting to me. John and I interviewed Dr. Kitty Harris a while back around resiliency. And one of the things that she said was really important is what she called structure style, that when a bad thing happens, like getting up and making your bed, having breakfast, like the routine that you
that's right.
have.
That's right.
It's really important that is, now there'll be some leeway in that, I'm sure, but it's important that be reclaimed as a rhythm.
Yes.
Why is that important?
Children can't tell time generally early on.
Yeah.
And it helps them to create a sense of
Predictability.
control,
Okay.
predictability. I know what to expect. We're going to get up. We're going to have breakfast. We're going to make up our beds. We're going to go. Today we're going to grandma's. Tomorrow we're going to the zoo. Whatever it is. But this is our structure for the day, and it helps them kind of kids, it's that frontal lobe. We think as adults, we think through those things like, oh, I know my to-do list. I got to run by the laundry. I got to do this. But kids don't necessarily do that. And so you're doing that for them.
Okay.
You're kind of performing that executive function, if you will, so that they can feel, and for kids who are very visual, giving them a little visual schedule, here's what we're going to do today.
Yeah.
That will help them, okay, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And another parent asked, what are signs that a child might need more than just a listening ear?
Yeah, if you start seeing significant changes in eating, sleeping, excessive irritability, temper tantrums, falling apart at the whatever you say. They say they want a green and you don't have a green, and I don't have a green fork. Oh, here's the blue fork. And they just, it all just falls apart. And that's unusual for them. If their temperament really, if you see a real shift there, that's a sign that they're really struggling.
Mm. And that they probably need more support than...
Right. Well, and it depends on the kid. I mean, and if parents can create, these spaces, I mean, in the next few weeks, I would create a lot of those spaces for kids. But if parents are feeling bewildered, like I really don't know what to say beyond this, I've run out of options here, I don't know what else to do, then I would say absolutely to connect with a mental health professional who can give you some guidance and maybe, assess and work with the parent or the child or both.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Okay.
Yeah, one of the things you talked about, the parents, we think about the trauma for children that were there or teenagers that were counselors.
Yeah. Right.
And of course, there's all this trauma of parents wondering and traveling there and waiting.
Yes.
Some with reunions and some with not. But even what we're finding is that there's so much anxiety from people that have no one connected to this at all, but they know it's happening in their neighborhood with people that they know, that they've come across.
Right.
And so everybody's anxiety is up. But for parents, whether they are directly connected to this or their children or friends or somehow, they've got to do their own work.
Absolutely.
In this process. And I think it feels like to me that like mental health has been something that a lot of people like you take for granted, or maybe you just don't ever engage in, or maybe it's a sign of weakness. Some men feel that way, like I'm not going to go see a therapist or a counselor. Mm-hmm. What are some ways that we can speak to parents to just say, you need to engage in this work and here's how you go about doing it?
Yeah. Well, this particular tragedy has tapped into both a child's worst fear and a parent's worst fear.
That's right.
So we've got dueling traumas, whether you've been touched by it or whether you're just adjacent to it or it's just in the community, because it brings to our attention the reality that as a parent, that children can die. We cannot protect them from everything. And for children, that people can suddenly go away. They can be gone. Now, for children, that's usually the fear is about parents, right? And so that's another thing I think parents really need to stress to their children is that for those who can, we are here. We are safe in this moment. But for parents, absolutely, because this is tapped into a real traumatic place for a parent. And to think, wow, if my kid is not in my direct, if I can't be right here with them, are they going to be okay? And even then. And so I think carving out space for that is critical. We don't want to live in that space forever, but we do have to come to terms with that. This is part of the human experience. horrible, terrible things happen.
Yeah, they just don't always happen to me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Is one of the questions that may get at that is like, what's the best language to use with younger children who don't understand death in the way that, like John was talking, as adults, we've metabolized and understand that, you know.
Yeah. Depending on their age and their developmental level, I mean, for very young children, you know, when you're talking like 3 or 4, you're going to be really general in your descriptions. And I think you can't say that they didn't die because they did, right? So we have to say, yes, this person, because your child may know, you know, they may have played with they may have the brother or sister who played with this child, or so they knew them, and so they're like, wait a minute. And then you explain to them, that's why people are so sad, because this child passed away, this child died, this child is no longer here on earth with us.
And using that language is important?
It is important because we think we are going to protect children by not giving them information. I'm not suggesting that we give them great amounts of detail, but the reality is this is what happened. And children can handle the truth if we are there to help them and assist them. And not giving them the truth, and then they learn it elsewhere, calls them into question, because then they have to they question their own intuition, because kids kind of kids are extraordinarily perceptive. They hear it, they've seen it, they know something horrible has happened. And to deny that makes you put the child in the position then of, well, do I trust what I feel?
What I'm feeling from everything around
or do
me.
I trust what the grown-ups are telling me? And as a young child, well, I have to trust the grown-ups because I'm too little to make decisions. I'm too little to know these things. But then we implant the seed that they can't trust themselves, and that's a very dangerous place to be.
And so when you're talking, like I'm thinking about all the different types of people connected to this. Parents who have children, let's say in this 3rd grade, 4th grade, or whatever.
Right.
And they maybe were in school with some of these kids.
Yes.
We have a tendency, like you said, to shelter our children from bad things. And what I hear you saying is like, somehow the parent needs to be able to communicate with your children. They might not have been at Camp Mystic, but they may know these children, or they may know friends of these children.
Right.
Those parents are going to need to have a conversation with their children to let them know what happened in an appropriate way, is what I hear you saying.
Correct.
Instead of just saying, we don't want to tell them because we don't want to upset them.
Right. Because they're going to hear it from somewhere. And when they do, it is, any information like this is always best coming from parents, not from peers or phones or whatever.
Yeah. What if you have a kid that doesn't want to talk about it? It kind of shuts down, is quiet. Because I always feel like if a kid will talk, you've got a chance. But then there's also kids that they disappear into themselves. What do you do then?
Yeah. Then you just keep creating the space, and you don't force them. If they don't want to talk, and I would give them the permission to say, if you don't want to talk about this, that's okay. And I want you to know that if you do want to talk about it, I'm here. I'll listen. Okay. But do create those spaces
of play.
And you want to go, hey, you want to go for a walk? You want to pick a game? Should we play a card game? Because it's in those spaces where children, again, they're doing things that are familiar and comfortable. They're playing a game that they love or that they know. Then they might be more willing to talk because they've got this distractor that they can be looking at and maybe not feeling like they have to acknowledge it up front. And kids are going to do this differently. I mean, different personalities are going to handle this differently. And for kids who don't talk, it doesn't mean they're not feeling it. And for kids who seem like they're kind of like not processing it or not understanding it.
They seem like they're fine.
It doesn't mean that they're not processing it or that they're not understanding it. But again, parents know their kids the best, right? And so you know what your kid is like. And so you're going to create spaces that are going to be comfortable and comforting for your children. Because the message is, a terrible thing has happened, and I'm here for you.
This next set of questions comes from kids that parents who've sent in questions from their own kids that really are difficult questions. Here's one: why her and not me? Why couldn't somebody help her? Why do bad things happen to people?
Yeah. So, yeah, the guilt of surviving, you know, that's a real thing, and I think to say, I don't know why her. I don't know. You didn't do anything. She didn't do anything. I don't know why. And that's a very valid answer.
We were talking earlier. When these things happen, the why questions, you know, in theology they call it the theodicy. You know, why bad things happen to good people.
Right.
And this is when, as Matt and I were talking earlier, when a lot of bad theology starts to emerge, and a lot of bad people mean well. And that's the thing we try to tell people. People mean well, and they're coming out of their own, like they don't know what to say, but they've heard things.
Yeah.
Like, you know, God wanted another flower in his garden or something, which is like the worst thing
Right. No.
ever. It makes God sound like this evil despot, right?
Right.
Those are not things we believe, but those are things that get said. People try, God has a plan,
Right.
all these sorts of things. I would just tell parents, you're going to hear a lot of things, and just know that, I don't know how to say this nicely, a lot of these people don't know what the hell they're saying.
Yeah.
It's coming out of their own insecurity and uncertainty. They
That's
feel
right.
like they have to say something.
Right.
And I've always just told people, just say, I'm so sorry. That's really all you have to say.
Yeah.
If you want to be there for someone. But
Yeah.
I just think that people mean well. I think what I tell people when they say something, I said, so-and-so said this, and I just think I said, they don't know what to say.
Yes.
And they're pulling from old things that they think they're platitudes, right? They're pulling from these, and they're trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
So I try to help people to see, just know this person is actually, they're trying to be helpful, and what they said was horrible. And
Well, and it's particularly, I think that's particularly dangerous for young children when they're told this is God's plan, or God wanted her with him, and it creates a sense of, well, wait a second. I thought God loved us. I thought God, you know,
was good.
Why? I thought God was good. Why would God have a plan to kill children? That's, you know, and so I think it really creates a very difficult position in a child's mind. And for your older kids, your you know, kids who can really think more abstractly, that's something they probably do grapple with. Like, wait a second. But, you know, again, in my own kind of belief is that God's not up there puppeteering the world and creating, you know, picking and choosing. That we live in humanity. We live as humans, and amazing things happen, and terrible things happen.
One of the things that I've been thinking about too is, like, you have kids from third grade all the way up to senior in high school that, like, were directly impacted at that camp.
Right.
When I think about whether they are directly there or they're friends of people who are there, we also have I'm thinking about parents who are dealing with a sibling, like they have a child who lost a sibling.
Yeah.
How do you go about at the different ages or stages? I think is kind of where I'm getting at. It's like, what's the difference between having this conversation with a third grader, a 7-year-old,
Right.
a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old? I think you even mentioned at different ages, you know, 7, 10, 13, 16. Like there's an 18-year-old couple of girls that I know that were counselors there at this and went through the trauma of trying to save these kids. That's very different than maybe the kids who were up on the hill part of the camp who were older, 12, 13. They were able to be rescued,
Right.
whereas the younger kids were at the lower part of the camp and were not. How do just different ages of children process, generally speaking, some of these things, and how can you be helpful for those different ages as you're working with them as a parent?
It's a good question. I think for your older kids, your teenagers, they are going to have probably a lot of it for those who were there, who experienced this trauma. That will unfold probably over months and months to come, right? For younger kids, you know, the 12 and 13, who are kind of bridging that gap anyway between being an early childhood, you know, child and between moving toward the teen years, they understand a lot more abstractly than your younger kids, but they still are, they're not going to probably be able to understand this at an abstract level the way the older 18-year-olds will. And I think the message is the same throughout, but the delivery is a little different. I think that the message is, this is a terrible tragedy. I don't know why it happened. And we're going to get through this together. Now, for your older kids who may have anger, very reasonable thing. Why, for those kids, why couldn't I save one more kid? Why did my friend pass away? We're about to go off to college. How could this happen? To be angry and maybe they're angry at God. And to say, that's okay. Your anger is okay. It's not going to destroy you or me, and certainly not God.
Yeah.
We can tolerate all of those feelings, whatever they are. There's going to be profound sadness, and it may vacillate. It may go up and down. I'm furious, and now I'm in despair. And that's all normal to be expected. I mean, grief is not a one-time event. Grief is a process, and it's going to unfold for different people in different ways. For the very young children, they may experience it more bodily. You know, those kids may be more sensory, and so including making sure they get lots of exercise. Just run, jump, climb, just get it out of their bodies. Sensory play, sand, water, Play-Doh, those kind of things can be really helpful, just to kind of disperse it out of their bodies.
Yeah. There's that book, The Body Keeps a Score, that
Yes,
Bessel van der Kolk wrote a number of years ago. And I think that is really helpful to us to think about the ways that we hold, because it is embodied. It doesn't happen to
Absolutely.
our minds.
absolutely.
You know, our minds are trying to figure things out that really can't. But our body holds it. So
Yes.
to the fact that you're talking about play, exercise, keeping a schedule, these things
Right.
that we embody.
Right. Yeah, and it may show up somatically for a lot of people. It may show up as stomach aches and headaches, and I mean, there may be
In our dreams.
in your absolutely in the dreams. I mean, so you're absolutely, it's going to show up in the body. That's where trauma is held.
If a kid asks, will I always feel this scared or this sad? What do we say?
I don't think so. I don't think so. And then you can remind them of other things, lesser traumas, lesser events. Do you remember when Grandpa died? And it was really, really hard for a long time. And now, do you know how when we go to Grandma's and we remember him and we think about him and we tell funny stories about him, it feels different now than it did right when it happened. And I think this is going to feel different in time.
Is that a way to talk about healing without rushing it, without, because there's that space that I hear you talking about of just honoring both the not knowing and the slow work of healing? Like, how do you do that? How do you honor that space?
Yeah. Well, I think it's creating those spaces for those feelings, however they show up. Some kids may need more reassurance than others that it's not going to always feel this way. For your anxiously wired children who kind of lean toward anxiety anyway, they may need more reassurance that it will get better. It will get better. And right now, we're going to cry and we're going to scream or we're going to be upset. We're going to feel those feelings, and they're not going to kill us. They're just feelings. And we'll get to the other side of it.
How do you, we have a personal experience in our family. It's not anything close to this. My wife and daughters were at home. A tornado came over our house, and I was on my way back to the house. And my youngest daughter had this horrible fear of storms, thunder. If it thundered,
yes,
she was terrified. Right. Because she had been in the house while the tornado was coming over the house. Right. You feel the sucking the vacuum and everything. Yeah. How do you work with kids? There's these triggers now, right? Every time the clouds come or there's a storm or it rains, or in Houston, we're getting flash flood warnings all the time on our phone for the roads and stuff.
Yes.
That's got to trigger children or young people that have been through this or connected to this. And how do you go through that as you move forward when there are triggering events like that? How do you work with kids related to that?
Yeah. So if you've got someone who's going into panic attacks and those kind of things, then I would get professional assistance with that, because we really want to do some desensitization to help them gradually be able to manage those triggers better. So that really is therapeutic work. But in general, for kids who, oh, it's thundering again, then I'm going to say, you know what, it is. And let's research this. What is thunder? How does it happen? Because when we understand something and we can wrap our heads around it, so if you've got a 10-year-old who's terrified of the weather every time it thunders or lightnings, well, let's do some research on that. Let's see, what is thunder and what is lightning? And how many times have we had a thunderstorm? And how many times have we been okay? Has there ever been a time where we were not okay? And in your case, in your daughter's case, there was a tornado. So presumably they were okay, but it was terrifying, right? So yes. So it was terrifying and you were okay. So we go back to holding that juxtaposition of, I don't know, and we're going to get through it. This happened and you're okay. And so in those kind of non-therapeutic, where it doesn't really require that kind of intensity.
That would be a parent working with their child at home in a regular.
Yeah, right. Yeah. To say, it is scary. I understand you're scared. And last week, we had 3 thunderstorms, and we were okay in all of those. So usually, we're okay. And if things were to get bad, then we have a plan.
It goes back to your plan.
Right.
Yeah. And it seems to me there's two things that are coming up for me. One is like the work of the parent. It seems like there's so much, like if I have unregulated, unshepherded grief, anxiety, and I then see my child unregulated, unshepherded in their grief, it evokes mine, and it plays off of each other. So it's really important that parents have places to work on their own healing, on their own sense of telling their stories. Because my sense is that like often grief gets stored, and then when things like this happen, tears come out, and it's like it's tapping into reservoirs of grief within us. Right. And so it's really important that the parent, in a sense, do their work around this as well. And this is an opportunity for that.
It is. Yeah, and I there's a balance. I think it is okay for children to see parents cry.
Great.
It is okay for children to see their parents upset.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you are distraught and uncontrolled to the point that you feel like you just can't manage it, that's not something a child really needs to witness.
Yes.
But seeing you crying, feeling upset and feeling sad, and acknowledging that.
Yes.
Because again, we go back to the child's perception. So if you've got tears streaming down your face and your kid says, "Mommy, what's wrong? Daddy, are you crying?" And you say, "Oh, nope, I'm fine, just got something in my eye." We now place the child in the position of, do I believe you, parent, or do I believe my perception
My
of
intuition.
you're sad?
Yeah.
But if you downplay that or deny it, then the child is left in a very untenable position of having to choose. Do I believe what I know to be true or what you're telling me to be true?
So the holding together of two things that can be true at once seems like I'm hearing you say over and over is really important.
Yes.
That you are sad and we are going to be okay. Those two things
That's right.
are people die and pass away and you are safe.
That's right.
Like both of those things are true.
Yes, absolutely.
And kids can hold those together?
Absolutely, they can.
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of like a lot of the families directly impacted. They're going through all of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're mourning the loss of a child that they're having to deal with.
Yes.
They're dealing with a sibling now that's grieving, and they're a parent too that they have to try to, and then just their own questions of. And what I hear you saying is like for a parent not to hide it. Like you said, I mean, if it gets to a very bad space, you may not want to, but to let your child know you're sad.
Absolutely.
Is good. We don't ever want our kids to know when we're upset or something's wrong.
Yeah.
But those little suckers, they know everything.
They know.
Don't they? They don't.
I think it's very helpful. I think it's. I think also to give people permission to ask for help.
Oh, absolutely.
They're surrounded, like right now I see that people are surrounded by a lot of support, a lot of text messages, a lot of prayers. What can I do? At some point you're overwhelmed. There's only so many meals you can bring someone and only so many thoughts and prayers you can text to someone. But it seems to me that the longer term stuff, one of the things I think one of our pastoral care, Andrew was talking about, Wolf, is that, it's going to be a long time coming, and then school starts back. Right. And all these other kids who are not directly impacted but are now going through a crisis because it's a friend or removed, they're going to get back into school with their routine and their football and their schedules and all this sorts of things. But the children that were directly impacted, siblings who lost a sibling, for example, like the chances at that moment there starts to feel like a very big separation between like the normal people and like me who's something else.
Yeah.
Does that, as you continue going on, it's like you said something earlier, summer is an odd time because usually if something happens during the school year, there's crisis intervention counselors in the school and you have the routine. You don't have that in the summer.
Yeah.
And so going back to the routine in the fall, it's like there's work to be done now, but there's going to have to be work that's going to have to be done even then too, I would think.
Right. Yeah, and there's going to be all kinds of triggers the first day of school when, if I'm getting on the school bus but my sister's not, she's not here. I mean, well, those kids, for the siblings, there's that trauma is, I mean, it's a lifelong trauma, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so giving them tools and skills to manage that. And then are they going to feel guilty if they go to a birthday party and have fun?
Right. Right.
Should I not be having fun because...
That was a question I think
That
was
was
asked too, is can I laugh? Can I have fun? Can I enjoy myself again without, does that make me a bad person?
Right.
Does that mean that I don't
Right.
care about them?
Right. Does it mean... And I think parents need to proactively say that. You are here. You are still here. And you can live. And you can have fun. And you're going to be with your friends. And you're going to have good times. There are going to be times where this feels unbearable. And we will get through that together. And it is okay for you to go and live your life and have fun and experience joy. That's okay. You're not a bad person. And on just a side note on that, if perchance there's a kiddo who, you know, they didn't get along with their sibling and the last thing they said to them was something terrible or mean or whatever, that needs to be addressed too. You didn't cause this by saying something mean to your sister. You and your sister said mean things to each other, and that's normal. That's normal. Siblings do that. And you don't need to feel that you caused this or you're a terrible person because the last thing you said was, I'm so glad you're gone, you're going to be out of my room or whatever. So we need, if those events were to occur, because there's so many iterations, like you said, so many people are going to be affected in so many ways. And for each person, that's going to be a unique experience.
Yeah. Let me expand that question a bit too. So a friend is standing in the living room with a father or a mother who's lost a child, and they are disclosing to them guilty feelings they have about dropping their child off at camp, you know, and then, you know, going on vacation or something, and just saying, I should have been, what can a friend, how does a friend bear witness and hold space for their friend that's really having the same, really struggling with the same kind of question?
Yeah. Well, I think that is totally normal that we kind of go there, because we are meaning seekers. We are looking for, how come this happened? Who's responsible? Yeah. Who's for blame? And it's a tragedy. Mm-hmm. It is a natural disaster. And if I had only not taken her to camp, well, she was at camp. Maybe she really wanted to go to camp. She was excited about it. Or on the flip side, maybe she didn't. Yeah. Maybe she didn't. And then why did I make her go? And I didn't listen. And parents, you make decisions as humans. We make decisions with the information we have available at the time, right? We make the best decisions we can with the information we have available at the time. And clearly, you thought this was a great experience for your child to grow and develop and create friendships. And you know how important it is because of for multiple generations, your family has been to this camp and it's been a wonderful experience. Or this was a new experience and you didn't cause this. You didn't make this happen. It's a horrible, horrible tragedy. And you didn't cause it. I think we have, it's not going to stop the questioning. You know, the questions are going to be there.
You can exactly. You're still going to wrestle with it.
You're still going to wrestle with it. That's right.
And you just hope at some point you can.
It gets metabolized somehow.
Get to a place where you can believe that. But as a parent, I mean, it's like, it's just hard. That's going to be a hard thing for parents to do. I mean, even if they did everything right, the kid wanted to go, and everything was. You're going to find some way where you're going to try to take responsibility for that.
I think that's the thing that we struggle with humans the most is who is responsible.
Yeah.
I think that's why our God questions come up. I think that's why you'll find this thing politicized at some level. Because at some level we want to say this could have been avoided. And when that gets run down and you're staring at yourself in the mirror saying, wait, as we talked about earlier, as a parent, you think, I got to get my kid up and alive until they're 18,
Right.
That's the job.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you realize that horrible, horrible tragedies happen. And I'm wondering, like the powerful friendships that, because in places that, the church, that pastors won't be called into, people that are listening to this podcast, friends will be. They'll bear witness in places of darkness in people's lives that no one else can.
Yep.
And to be able to say to them 1,000 times over, this is not your fault and I am here, seems to be.
Yeah, and I think to also say to those people, this feels unfathomable. Your pain to me feels like something I don't know how one physically tolerates the level of pain that you're in. And I believe that you can do it. I believe you're going to get through this. And I'm here for you, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And I want to say within the Christian community that, and again, I said this on Sunday, I think you can lose faith. I think the most important thing is not to lose hold of each other's hand.
Yeah.
And I think that our faith will lose and regain our faith 1,000 times over in our lives. And I don't think you have to be a true believer to show up on a Sunday or on a Wednesday or get into a group to take a hold of someone's hand, right? This is at the end of the day, what we're doing at Chapelwood is a belonging system, right? Yeah. And our belonging always will precede what we believe, right? And so I think that I just want to say that out loud, that no matter where people are in their faith, that this is a community that will hold their hand and not ask them a litmus test of whether they belong or not. You belong. Yeah. So get yourself here or tell us where you are and we'll come find you. Yeah. I think that's the good news.
Yeah, and I think that is what we want to show to children is how do we get through really hard times. We get through it together. You do not have to do this life alone.
No.
You are not alone.
And I have heard that from families directly impacted, how they are surrounded by friends in the community. The community is gathered together, either people, they, even if you didn't know them, there's this huge outpouring of empathy for these families that we live and move and have existence with in this community. Yeah. And these kids are all over Texas, but it just so happens that it's a unique pocket in Houston where we are, where a lot of these kids participate in this camp. So we're swimming in the same waters, which is why, even though it happened 3 hours away or whatever, it's deeply resonating here because it's impacting so many. Yes. We could continue on, just so we know, is this is going to come out on Tuesday, and Wednesday evening here at Chapelwood at 5:30 in the sanctuary, we're going to be having a seminar, conversation of walking through this tragedy and learning how to talk about this. And you, Michelle Forrester, are going to be here with us.
Yes.
In that. Also Donna Watkins, who is a licensed counselor as well, and who does a lot with adolescent teens, has done a lot with the school district. We're hopeful and planning on having some other crisis counselors that work with the school district, so that we can have this seminar that will be really more geared towards parents and teens, not specifically for children, but to help equip these parents with some of the things we talked about today and some other things. They'll have an opportunity to text questions to us, to ask for you too. And then afterwards, we're going to have offer time of prayer for anyone who wants to stay in the sanctuary and pray. And then also in the fellowship hall, we'll have some of these crisis counselors for whether it be teens or parents who want to talk and process some of these things together. We're doing this together with Memorial Drive United Methodist. We really want this to be a community-wide event and not seen as like just one church doing this, but open to anyone who'd like to come. And then on Thursday night, Memorial Drive United Methodist is going to host a worship prayer vigil with prayer and litany and silence and remembrance and it'll be available for all family to come. You could bring your children and, like you said, in processing the grief of that. And so there's going to be also, right now we have at chapelwood.org/resources, plural resources. You can find all of this information there, as well as a list of counselors, PDF resources for talking to your children about grief and loss, but also a list of counselors and therapists. You are on that list, Michelle, and many others that just to give people resources. And if you know of anyone that we need to be reaching out to that needs help, we have email contacts for you to reach out either here or at Memorial Drive as well. Our job is just to do the best we can to provide the resources and to be present in the midst of all of this. So I want to thank you so much for coming, at least for this little while today, to get the conversation started. We wanted to be able to do this, to have something to put in parents and friends' hands to start having the conversation. And then as we move into Wednesday night, there's opportunities for them to come and ask questions. We will record that. We won't live stream it, but we will record it so that we can then use that as well to share with people if they're not able to attend.
And we hope that people will pass this podcast on to friends and family around the state to find it helpful for them as they walk through. So thanks for your wise, helpful, practical way of helping us show up in the lives of people.
For stepping forward. I mean, you have the skill and expertise, experience related directly to what people are struggling with right now. And so it's very helpful for you to be at the forefront of these conversations, equipping people, especially these parents and families. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm glad.
Appreciate it.
Well, I'm John Stevens with Matt Russell and Michelle Forrester. This is Pod Have Mercy, and we're praying for everybody that's been affected by the floods in Texas, and especially praying for each and every family that's been touched by this, whether directly or indirectly. So God bless, and thank you for being with us.